Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Libby. I'm a pelvic health physiotherapist and a manual osteopath. I practice on the South Shore of Nova Scotia, for those of you who don't know me. Thank you for joining today. If you're tuning in live, if there's any problems with audio or internet, just throw a little comment into the comment box. I've got my, sometimes I'm not the greatest with technology, I guess. If you have slow internet at home for any reason, you might find that the live version is a little bit more difficult to stream without interruption. And if you're frustrated, just go do something and come back in 20 minutes when it's already uploaded, and you might find that it's good then. So today we're doing a pelvic floor focus, just a short class that is, I had said we're going to connect, we're going to release, and we're going to strengthen the pelvic floor. So we don't have time in this video to go into all the wonderful anatomy and physiology and function of the pelvic floor, but basically the pelvic floor is the muscular floor that lies between your sit bones, between your tailbone and your pubic bone. It wraps around the bladder opening and the anus, and in females also the vagina. And it's really important for controlling urine or bowel movements, wind, and sexual function. So there's many symptoms you can have with pelvic floor dysfunction. And if you have any of them, then I'd certainly encourage you to see a pelvic floor physiotherapist once you can, once we're out of this global pandemic, because nothing really beats having that individual assessment. It's really hard to know what exactly you should be doing for the pelvic floor until you've had an assessment. And sometimes it's just that one assessment, and then you can be off with exercises that are specific to you to either release or strengthen the pelvic floor. So today, though, we're going to start with connecting the pelvic floor with the breath. I really believe that the breath plays a huge part in pelvic floor health. I'm going to use like a big stability ball, just because I have one that I sit on when I work sometimes administrative stuff in my house. If you don't have a ball, you can sit on your mat with your legs crossed, or you could be kneeling, but I sort of like that connection of something against the pelvic floor. You could sit in a chair. So. And I'm going to sit side too, so you can sort of see the belly action as well. Because I'd like you first to see, however you're sitting, can you get even weight on your sit bones? And can you try to feel that you're off of your tailbone a little bit? So sometimes we're sitting, and this is our preferred sitting posture. And that puts the pelvic floor into a little bit of a loose or slack position, and it certainly doesn't put it at an advantage. So if you can, I want you to really feel that you pull up, you're not sitting on your pubic bone, but you're putting a little more presence into that forward part of the pelvis. You're even on your sit bones, your tailbone's untucked. And then I'd like you to take either one or both hands to your low belly, and I'm just going to do one so that hopefully you can see the action. And when you breathe in, I want you to feel that you get a little bit of expansion in the low belly. I want you to feel like you fill that low belly with air. In reality, you want it to go all the way down to the pelvic floor, but if you're not already connected there, at least feel it in the low belly. So nice breath in through your nose. And just that in-breath to feel and try to drive the air to that area, to your deep belly. If you can keep that breath going deeper, I want you to imagine that as you breathe in, you feel like the pelvic floor drops, that muscular floor drops, it relaxes, it comes more into contact with the ball, or the chair, or the mat. So it's this idea of relaxing, widening the pelvis, dropping that pelvic floor. And then when you get the in-breath part happening, the relaxation, the air pulling to that pelvic floor, then I want you to think of the out-breath, which is when you're going to lift your pelvic floor, you're going to contract it, you're going to activate it. So when you're activating your pelvic floor, you can use many different cues. You could think of gently stopping your pee. Or maybe you feel a more connection if you think of trying not to break wind. So more the back of the pelvic floor. One of my favorite analogies or visualizations that I give to patients is, female patients, is to imagine that you've got a blueberry at the entrance of your vagina. When you breathe out, you're lifting that blueberry up, 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 up. Inside the vagina, you're not smashing it. It's a lift action, and then when you breathe in, you relax. So, not sure which one of those resonates with you. It could be something else too. But when you breathe in, I want that relaxation. I want you to feel the belly filling, the pelvic floor relaxing and dropping, or the pelvic floor filling as well. And when you breathe out, you're going to lift the pelvic floor as that low belly draws in a little bit. And we're just going to do 3 more breaths like that in your seated position. Breath in to expand, and breath out to lift. When you're lifting the pelvic floor too, nothing else should tense, right? You don't need to grit your teeth to have a connection to the pelvic floor. You don't need to get tension in your shoulders. You shouldn't need to squeeze your bum or pull the inner thighs in or hold your breath, right? That's why I like to do it with the breath. So one more, hopefully you're feeling a little connection there. If you're not, it does take some practice, but we're going to come down onto our backs on the mat and sort of continue that thought. Hold that over there. Continue that motion. So on your back on the mat, in what we call a neutral pelvis position, which is just where you have a little space behind your low back. You're just not pressing that low back into the mat. You're just laying in your relaxed neutral. And I want you to take your hand to that low belly again, and just do that same breath a couple times. So that as you breathe in, you're feeling some filling of the tummy into your hand, and you're imagining that you're so relaxed in the pelvic floor that if you had to pee, you almost would. So that as you breathe out, you've got a good starting point. You're already relaxed, and you have a good starting point to do that contraction. You can test this when you're going to the washroom. Just don't do it all the time. But if you have the motion right when you're peeing and you do that out breath and stop, or out breath and contract, it should stop your pee. So a little self-test, just don't do it all the time, just once to see if you've got the movement right. So that is our connect part, and it might take more than that for you, but there's the start for today. The release of the pelvic floor. If you hold tension in the pelvic floor, then you can't really be strong in the pelvic floor. So sometimes you have a pelvic floor problem because there's some weakness, low tone, immediately after pregnancy and delivery. That's often the case. Other times the pelvic floor is weak because it is holding tension either globally or in the back or one side. Maybe there's old scar tissue. So many various reasons. So we're just going to do a few stretches. And if you feel any of these in that area, like into your tailbone or into the sit bone area or just deep in the hips, they're probably good stretches for you to do. And we're going to continue that breathing while we do it, or at least the relaxation part of it. So the first stretch is Happy Baby. It's one of the most well-known ones for targeting that tight pelvic floor. And you're just bringing both knees to your chest. And depending on your flexibility, whether you're holding behind the thighs and pulling the knees in, or you can grab onto the front of the shins, or maybe you can grab your big toes. That's where I think the Happy Baby comes from, is grabbing the toes. And when you breathe in, you're really trying to feel that the sit bones get a little bit wider, that there's relaxation around the tailbone. Excuse me. Combining it with your breath is always nice. Always that nice big breath. Deep into the lungs, deep into the rib cage, not into the upper chest, not into the shoulders, right? And from here, you can rock a little bit. Like you can pull the feet in, or say you're holding onto the shins, you can pull the shins in a little more. You can rock side to side and see how that feels. And if you feel that, in this area, down in your sit area, then that might be a nice stretch that, you might think, oh yeah, I feel it more in the hips, but it might actually be targeting the pelvic floor as well. So that's a nice one. You can hold it, you can oscillate, you can move in and out of it. It's sort of finding what feels good in your body. Another nice one for some people, and again, it's so individual, so just see where that targets with you, but put the soles of the feet together or as close together as they can be and let the knees open out to the side. Simple, done. No. This one might be nicer if you have had some abdominal surgery, cesarean section delivery, or if it's for any reason the front of your pelvic floor that is a little bit tighter. So you might feel this just as an opening in the groin area, but you also, if you feel it as a bit of a pulling into the low abdominals, then this could be one that for you is a good way to release start to release some tension in your pelvic floor. And you can still do that same breath. You can breathe in and think of driving or drawing that air to wherever you feel tension. And then just seeing if on your out breath you can sort of melt and let go of that tension, right? The release of the pelvic floor is probably the most difficult part. Once you have a nice release of the pelvic floor, you can usually strengthen, no problem. But that release sometimes takes a lot of thought, or not a lot of thought, but just a lot of mindfulness and body awareness. So if you feel that one, that could be a good one for you. Another nice one that I really like is you can do, let's just try it. Bring the knees in, and then you're going to cross let's do our right knee first. You're going to cross the right knee over the left. And that might be enough. You might say, oh, wow, I really feel that in the outside of my hips or down into the sit bones. Again, this one is a little bit more the back of the pelvic floor, but it's a really nice one for the hips. So you can hug both knees in towards the chest like that, and maybe that's enough. But if you don't feel much here, you can start to grab onto the shins or maybe the ankles or the feet and bring the feet wide and start to pull them up to your sides. And that's a lovely, lovely stretch in the hips that can also feed into releasing the pelvic floor. Once again, when you get into a place where you feel a little bit of tension, you're breathing. And you're trying to see if you can find a way, whether it's a little rock side to side or a little draw in and release, you're trying to find a way to let go of that tension in the body. You're having a little dialogue with your tissues as you're doing this. And maybe you're the type of person who needs absolute quiet and distraction-free to do this. So make sure if that's the case, you really need to carve that out for yourself. Let's just try the other side just to compare, but put the left leg on top. And again, it might just be that you already feel it here and all you do is hold the knees and breathe. Or if it feels okay, try to move down the legs and then bring the feet apart, keeping the knees one on top of another. And again, it's a really nice targeted stretch for the hips and the pelvic floor. And if this is too much, if you really are not even comfortable getting the knees like this, you could do it's called the figure of four stretch, where you just have the right ankle on the left thigh, and you pull in. It's a little bit different, but it's a nice one to start with anyway. So one more stretch that I enjoy for the pelvic floor sometimes is and it gets into the low back fascia, is just to straighten, let's straighten our right leg out and take the left knee towards the chest. And again, if you feel a good stretch there, enjoy that. But the one that I'm thinking of is to take the outside of the knee in the right hand, leave the left arm, the left shoulder blade on the mat, and then just pull the knee across the body. And depending how flexible you are, you might allow yourself to rotate and almost get that knee on the floor. But if you feel that a lot in your sort of side body, your back body, your hip, or if you feel it in your pelvic floor, then it can be a really nice one for you. Once you're there, of course, same thing. Nice diaphragmatic breathing. Breathing in relaxation. Trying to let go of tension as you breathe out. You can ease out of it and come back into it, whatever feels good for your, however you get the best response in your tissues. Let's just do the other side to be even. So nice length in your left leg, the right knee coming in towards the chest. Again, maybe you linger there and enjoy that stretch, but ideally you bring the knee across the body, leave the right shoulder blade, the right arm on the mat, and you just go to where it's comfortable. You might feel that more on one side than the other. Not unusual. We've got lovely asymmetries in our body. Good. And then coming out of that. So there's other stretches too, other ways to release the pelvic floor, but that's what we're going to cover today because we're already running into our time. Let's do a couple strengthening exercises for the pelvic floor though. So you might usually you'll start your pelvic floor strengthening in isolation with the breath. Right? So your nice breath in that we did, and then on your out breath, you're thinking of gently stopping your pee or trying not to break wind, or you're thinking of the blueberry. Whatever cue works the best for you, that's what I want you to think of. And then we'll start to add other movement in. So put your hands on your pelvis, on your bony hips, hip pointers in the front, or even bring them in to your low belly. So the heels of your hands remain on your hip pointers and the fingertips can be on that low belly to feel the breath happening, right? Bring your feet right together and your knees right together, nice and bent. And just do that breath once. Breath in. Feel expansion in the belly, relaxation in the pelvic floor, and as you breathe out, pelvic floor lifts, pelvic floor contracts gently, deep belly will reflexively draw in a little bit. On your next out breath, you're going to try to add some leg movement. So as you breathe out, you get that pelvic floor lift and you hold it. And then you see if you can keep that pelvic floor on, that sensation of having gently stopped your pee or lifted the blueberry, and you let the right knee open out to the side. The hands are on the pelvis because ideally you want the pelvis to stay level, and then you're going to bring it back to the center. You're going to make sure you fully relax so that you can do that again on the other side. Breath in, you're relaxed, you expand. On your out breath, pelvic floor lift. Make sure you feel that action. And if you start to move the knee and you get a few inches into it and you lose the sensation in the pelvic floor, you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing down there anymore, then bring the knee back in, because the point is not to just let the knee get flopping side to side. You want that still pelvis. You want to know that you have that pelvic floor contraction happening and then adding in the leg motion. So this one you could do maybe 8 repetitions each side. Or if you start, you might start the first few repetitions, it improves. You're waking everything up, and then all of a sudden, it starts to get more difficult, or you're wobbling a little bit, or you're a little jittery in your movement, then you're probably fatigued. So from there, we can try another one where you're going to take that neutral pelvis. You're going to hold hands on the pelvis just to monitor. Leave the left knee bent, and we're going to straighten out the right leg. And you're going to let the right leg float. And I want you to put it back down. Because when you let the right leg float, you're going to do that action in the pelvic floor. So a nice lift of the pelvic floor, draw in with the deep belly a little bit. Not holding your breath, not tensing up in your upper abdominals, but just float that leg. And this is harder, but here you're going to do little circles with that leg. So you're going to try to keep the pelvis nice and still. When you breathe in, you're relaxed, and as you breathe out, you lift the pelvic floor, you do a little circle. Breath into center. Breath out, circle. All right, much longer lever, harder. Good work in the abdominals too. But your idea is to target that pelvic floor. You're using a little bit of hip motion to help. And you can reverse the direction. We'll do a couple the other way. And the idea is that the hips stay level, right? Without that pelvic floor or that deep core working, this might be what happens. You're doing your circle and the whole pelvis is following along for the ride. That's not what you want. It's not a dance through the waist. It's stillness in your center to control and support the movement that's happening in the leg. Put that leg down. Take a nice breath in. Straighten out the left leg. Before you lift it, stabilize. Do your out breath, lift the pelvic floor. Feel that reaction in the deep belly, and that might take some time. Don't be frustrated if you haven't got it in 20 minutes. Float the leg, and then try your circles again. Right? Use that out breath to help you. Right? And gradually you can make your circle a little bigger, but the point is not to make a big circle, it's to have the control and the steadiness in the hips. And again, you should feel that. You should feel that as some abdominal work on top of deep, deep belly work and pelvic floor work. That's another one that I like. You could bend the knee. Good. Another great one is on our side, and this has been in some of the postnatal core exercises that you want. If you want more pelvic floor work, you can check it out at zenithworkouts.com. There's prenatal and postnatal care, but you don't have to be immediately postnatal to do the postnatal exercises. They just have a big pelvic floor and deep abdominal focus, right? So this one is one that I like to do for that group. It's a good strengthener of the hips as well as the pelvic floor. Lay on your side and have a little space between your waist and the mat. So that just means you're not scooped in the spine like this. You've picked up, or you think of getting light in the waist or that bottom rib to keep that spine in a nice straight line. The knees should be the same length. The pelvis is nice and stacked. And a basic clamshell exercise is to breathe in with the knees down, everything's relaxed. You're thinking of that dropping of the pelvic floor in this moment. And then as you breathe out, you're raising the knee, you're lifting the pelvic floor, you're keeping the pelvis nice and still, so you're not rolling back. You're opening that hip, so you'll feel it in the outer hip. And lower down. Make sure you relax as you come down so that you can contract everything again. You lift the pelvic floor, you lift the knee, you relax it down. And it's this motion. You really use that out breath and that pelvic floor lift to, improve the relationship between the hip rotators. Their fascia blends into the pelvic floor, so this is a really nice exercise for enhancing that connection. From here, you can make this much harder. You could float the feet, and then you have to open the hip a little bit more, and you'll feel a little more work going on in your core so that pelvis doesn't roll back, that pelvis stays stacked, and you keep the space between waist and mat. And the other thing you can do is what we call broken clam. So you raise the knee, you've got that pelvic floor lift happening, you have the activity in the outer hip, and then you let that top knee lift just a little bit, so you break your clam, you put it back together and close it up. This is one of my favorites. I do it through the prenatal work, do it afterwards, put it in the live classes. Nobody gets away from the outer hip work. Make that one your last one on this side though, and we'll spin around. We'll just do the other side to even us out. Nice balance. So if your bottom arm isn't comfortable to be your pillow, like I'm demonstrating, you can you can bend the elbow and cradle the head, or you can even just get a cushion. That part is not important. It's just if you're comfortable to lay like that, it's convenient. Pick up your lowest rib or create a little space. If you have kids, one of those little mini cars, should be able to drive through that space maybe. Knees are together. You can take a quick glance at them to make sure they're the same length, but then bring your head into line with the rest of the spine. You can keep your top hand on your pelvis just to monitor. Breathe in and relax. Breathe out, nice pelvic floor lift as you raise the knee. When the knee is at its highest point, that's when you have the most activity in the pelvic floor in general. So that's when you can think of that extra little lift of the blueberry or gentle stop of your pee, or that trying not to break wind. Lower it down, make sure you relax everything. Feel that expansion into the low belly so that you can set everything again. Because what you're aiming to do here eventually is make it automatic. Make it so you don't have to think pelvic floor lift and knee in the air, and you want it to just happen. So improving pelvic floor function is a lot of thought at first, almost more work for your brain than it is for your body, but then it becomes automatic, and then you can take it to, whatever level you want to be at, whether you're, an athlete and you want to get back to your sport. Let's try the legs floating. Right? Or whether you just want to go for a walk and not have to find a bathroom halfway through, right? Going for the broken clam, so knee opens, pelvis is still stacked, you've got your space between waist and mat, and then little break, put it down, close it up. Lift, break, close. Pelvic floor though, right? If you don't have that thought and that connection with the pelvic floor, don't do the whole exercise. Do the basic clam and make sure you have that action happening. Make this one your last one. Perfect. And lower the feet, and you can come up to sit. Good. So thank you for joining today. I hope that you found some of the information very useful, and I appreciate your feedback. So if you want to leave a message in the comment box, or you want to send a private message, even with questions, I will do my best to get back to you as quick as I can. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.